Welcome to Friendship International Bible Story. Last week we told you about a man named Abraham and how God had called him from where he lived and given him a promise. Now, all of this story is about Abraham having faith. The Bible talks about faith and Abraham together often. In one place in the Bible it says that it's impossible to please God without faith, because the one who draws near to God must believe that God exists and that he rewards people who try to find him. So this story is about Abraham and faith. And it's also about God who keeps his promises. One of the important things about God is that he speaks to people and that he does what he says. Abraham, as we learned last week, was called by God and given a promise and told to travel away from his own hometown and to a land that God would show him. And eventually, after many years, Abraham got there, and God repeated the promise to him. He told him, "I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name to be great, and you will be a blessing to all nations." That was God's promise to Abraham. Abraham was wondering, when is this going to happen? Because it had been a long time since God had promised, and he still did not have a son. So one night God took Abraham out under the starry sky. He showed him all the stars of the heaven, and in the desert climate before there was electricity, the stars were just blazing from the sky, and there were so many of them. And God said, "You see all those stars, Abraham? Can you count them?" Abraham said, "No, there's too many to count." And God said, "Even so, I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars of the sky and the sand by the sea." But Abraham and his wife were old, and God kept his promise even in their old age. They had a son whose name was Isaac. All of that was in the last story, but now we need to go forward, because although Abraham had received God's promise, God wanted to test Abraham to find out, did he really believe God? Did he really believe that God would keep his promise in all circumstances? And so God told Abraham a strange thing. Isaac, his son, was about 12 years old. And God spoke to him and said, "Abraham, I want you to take Isaac and a donkey and put some wood on the donkey and go to a mountain named Moriah and go up there on the mountain, and there I want you to sacrifice your son to me." That meant he would have to kill his son. The son that God had promised was going to have to be killed. Well, Abraham obeyed God. He did what God told him to do. Now, this must have seemed awfully strange to Abraham. And I'm sure Abraham didn't tell Sarah, because she would not have allowed it. But Abraham took his son, didn't tell Isaac what they were doing, and they went on a donkey, and they went off on their trip, and they came to the bottom of the mountain. And Abraham put the wood on the back of his son, and a box with coals in it, and the two of them started up the mountain. And Isaac was wondering, he was a smart boy, and he said, Father, tell me, we have fire and we have wood, but where's the sacrifice for the sacrifice we're going to give?" He did not yet understand it was for him. And Abraham's answer showed his faith. He said, "God will provide the sacrifice." So they went to the mountain, and Abraham then tied up his son and put him on the wood. And he took a knife and was ready to kill his son, to offer him to God according to what God had told him. And just as he was ready to stab his son, God said, "Wait, stop from what you're doing. Do not harm your son. But I see that you have in your heart to obey me." And Abraham looked up, and there in a bush nearby was caught a ram. And a ram was an acceptable sacrificial animal. And Abraham thanked God, and he went and took the sacrifice that God had provided. And he sacrificed the ram on the altar, Abraham and his son Isaac, and they gave thanks to God. In this story, we learn that Abraham truly believed God. According to the book of Hebrews, later interpreted this story and told us that Abraham had been promised that his only son would continue his family. But when Abraham was tested, he still had faith, and he was willing to sacrifice his son because he was sure that God was able, if necessary, to raise his son back to life. This was just like getting Isaac back to life when God told him not to do it and gave him a substitute. So from this story, in Genesis 22, verses 1 to 18, we learn that God is faithful and he keeps his promises, and that God provides the sacrifice for us.